Good morning and Happy New Year, and welcome back to our study on the book of Judges. Today we're going to start the study of Sampson and his story as the most famous of all the judges. Now, there are at least 4 chapters in this book devoted to Sampson. Most people know him through his arrangement with Delilah and his long hair, but they don't know the rest of the story, which is really described in these chapters. So we're going to start chapter 13 today and see if we can complete it and then get on to the rest of the story about Sampson in later studies. Chapter 13 starts out with the same scenario that we have seen before many times in this book. The children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord and the Philistines, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. This is a recurring theme. Israel repents, God delivers them from their enemy, they do well for a while, and then they fall back into their old habits, and they do evil in the sight of the Lord, and then He allows their enemies to take control over them once again. And this time it was the Philistines. Now, in the previous chapter under Jephthah, it was the Ammonites. The Ammonites were on one side of the border of Israel, the Philistines on the other. And where Jephthah took care of the Ammonites, the Philistines now came in and took over control of Israel, mainly because the Israelites went back to their old habits of doing evil in the sight of the Lord. Now it says there was a certain man from Zorah of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Indeed now you are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Now therefore please be careful not to drink wine or similar drink, and not to eat anything unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come upon his head, for this child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. Here we have the idea that God appointed Sampson from the time of his conception. Unlike the other judges who were all adults and all under different circumstances when they were appointed judges by God, Sampson was appointed even before he was conceived. And it shows how variable God's choice of judges became. Deborah was a judge before she became a judge in Israel. Jephthah was an outcast because he had been conceived apparently in adultery. Gideon was a person who had no strength or no apparent ability to ward off the enemy, and he was there threshing wheat in a wine press. I mean, it was all sorts of different aspects under which judges were appointed, and God appointed Sampson even before he was conceived. And this happened a number of times in the Bible. There are many cases where the Lord appeared to someone, and then this lady conceived. Elizabeth in the New Testament, and Mary in the New Testament, Sarah and Abraham in the Old Testament. Many cases where these people were told they were going to conceive before they actually did, and the child of the conception went on to become very famous in the Bible. And this is not a different scenario, because here the angel of the Lord came and appeared to the woman and said that you are barren, but you will conceive. And he told her not to drink wine or similar drink, not to eat anything unclean, because the child that she would conceive would become a Nazarite. Now, Nazarite was a particular vow that people usually made voluntarily to keep themselves separate for God. And if you go back to the book of Numbers, chapter 6, it tells you what the Nazirite was, the law of the Nazirite. Chapter 6, beginning at verse 1. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, when either a man or woman consecrates an offering to take the vow of a Nazirite, to separate himself to the Lord, he shall separate himself from wine and similar drink. He shall drink neither wine, vinegar made from wine, nor vinegar made from a similar drink, neither shall he drink any grape juice, nor eat fresh grapes or raisins. All the days of his separation he shall eat nothing that is produced by the grapevine, from seed to skin. All the days of the vow of his separation no razor shall come upon his head, until the days are fulfilled for which he separated himself to the Lord. He shall be holy. This was the Nazirite vow, and this is what the angel of the Lord said to the wife of Manoah, that here her son would be a Nazirite. This was not voluntary on Sampson's part. This was done from the day of his conception to the day of his death. He shall be a Nazirite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. Note, it says he will begin. He would not complete the deliverance, but he would begin it. So here this woman was alone, he had no children, was barren. The angel of the Lord, who was in fact a theophany of Christ in the Old Testament, an appearance of Christ in the Old Testament, came to her and said, You will conceive, and you will bear a child, and he will be a Nazirite. Follow the Nazirite vow. And you shall also follow the Nazirite vow until you deliver. So the woman came and found her husband, telling him what she had heard. And he did not disbelieve her, but he wanted some more information. So he said that he asked his wife who this person was, and that she said, he did not tell me his name, but she told her husband what the angel of the Lord had told her. So what did Manoah do? The first thing he did was pray to the Lord and said, Please let the man of God come again and teach us what we shall do for the child who will be born. So Manoah did not disbelieve his wife. He did not question what she had said. He asked for a reappearance for the angel to come, and just so they could teach the child properly. This was different than the lack of faith with which Zachariah had shown when Elizabeth became pregnant, when the angel said that his wife, Elizabeth, would conceive and bear a son. Zachariah disbelieved and was struck down, if you recall the story in the New Testament. In this case, Manoah did not disbelieve, but asked for clarification. And this was all he did. And he did this when he prayed. And God listened to him. So God sent the angel of the Lord again, but came to his wife in the field. She had to go and get Manoah and bring him to where the angel was. So this whole scenario of this conception, which was not a divine conception, but a divinely inspired and divinely foretold conception, was similar to that of other stories in the Bible. There was a faith that this would happen, and the husband and the wife both believed it. Manoah wanted more information, and he arose and followed his wife, coming to the man and said, Are you the man who spoke to the woman? And he said, I am. So he asked what will be the boy's rule of life in his work, and he was told only what the angel had repeated previously to his wife. All that I commanded her, let her observe. He didn't really give any more information about the child. So Manoah tried to honor this person by offering a sacrifice or offering a meal to him of a lamb, roasted lamb. The angel said, no, if you're going to make a sacrifice, make it only to God, because only God deserves a sacrifice. And when some development occurred so that the sacrifice or the lamb was burnt and roasted, then this angel, which was really a theophany of Christ apparently, went up in the flame towards heaven. So there was some fear on the part of Manoah that he would die, because now he said, we have seen God. And his wife said, no, if God was going to kill us, he wouldn't have given us this prophecy, this theory, this idea that we would conceive and bear a son. She had more faith and more sense in this than did Manoah. But Manoah and her together did have faith that what was said to them was going to come about. Now, the idea that this all happened in a place called Zorah was in the country of Dan, which was very much on the border between the country of Dan and Judah, and was very close to the land of the Philistines. So all this happened in an area where the Philistines would be involved and would be invading Israel, and this was where Sampson was brought up and born. So Manoah and his wife believed and accepted the fact that this angel, this person from God, believed to be a theophany or an early appearance of Christ before his actual birth on earth, believed in him and believed that this would happen and accepted God's statement. Notice Manoah prayed to God. He didn't just do anything, just sit there. He prayed to God and asked for more clarification. So Manoah did make the goat as an offer to the Lord. This angel, this person from heaven, went up towards heaven in the flames, showing that he was actually a heavenly being. And Manoah said, we shall die because we have seen God. His wife said, no. If the Lord had desired to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering from our hands, nor would he have shown us all these things, nor would he have told us such things as these at this time. So the woman went on and had a son, bore a son, named him Sampson, and he went on to become one of the judges of Israel. It says the Spirit of the Lord began to move upon him at Manaah Dan, between Zorah and Eshtaol. Again, in that area of the country, which is close to both the border with Judah and the border with the Philistines. The whole idea here is that Samson was born as a Nazarite. He was born as separated and given to God from the time of his conception, not appointed as a judge in adult life, but was singled out by God even before he was born to be separate and to be a Nazarite to God, completely holy. In many ways, this has a parallel with the birth of Christ himself, who was born, his birth was announced, his conception was announced by an angel. He was born as a person separate to God, without sin, and grew up in the Spirit of the Lord. So there's somewhat of a parallel here. It's almost like a prophecy for the prophecy of a deliverer in the sense of Samuel, a deliverer of Israel, as a prophecy of the great deliverer who was going to come many years later. The idea of this birth and Sampson being a Nazirite really reflects upon what happens in the later chapters. Because Sampson, although he had started off with great potential, with great possibilities, did not live up to those possibilities as time went on. And we will see how he got involved with Delilah, with other aspects of life which were not in keeping with his upbringing or what he was supposed to do. Even though he had great strength, he had great abilities, he still allowed this to slip. And this was another example of how far the whole nation of Israel had fallen before God. So this really is the start of the story of Sampson. And we will get on further into more of the story in the next few lessons, in the next few chapters. So please join me for those chapters. We'll start into chapter 14 next week. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see you again next week. Bye for now.